Hi everyone. So this week we are going to be finishing up our unit on the author with author's effect. So we have already talked about a couple of pieces of the author's work already. We have talked about author's purpose, and we have talked about author's point of view. So if you have not had a chance to watch the lessons about author's purpose and author's point of view, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and pause this video and go back and watch those first. So author's purpose, we said, was the reason why an author writes. And we said that there can be three main reasons why an author writes, and we called them PIE, P-I-E. Our P stands for persuade. Sad looking you there, persuade. The I stands for inform. And the E stands for entertain. Now we also talked about author's point of view, which we said was their feelings or attitudes towards a subject. And we talked about a couple of words when we talked about author's point of view. We talked about connotation, and we talked about denotation. When we talk about connotation, we said connotation is the way a word makes me feel, or the way a word feels in society, whereas denotation is the dictionary definition of a word. When we talked about connotation, we said that you can have three types of connotation. You can have a positive connotation, meaning that the word has a positive feeling. You can have a negative connotation, meaning that your word has a negative feeling, or you can have a neutral connotation, meaning that your word is neither positive or negative. It can go between, or it is not one nor the other. So that's author's purpose and author's point of view. So what we're going to add on to this is author's effect, which is what we look at when we put all of everything together, author's purpose and point of view. We kind of come away with what the author is trying to actually get at, which we're going to say is their effect. So the skill that we're working on here, again, just like with our last lesson, is working on understanding words and phrases inside of a text and how that connotative meaning really helps us understand what the text is trying to tell us. So by the end of our lesson, we have two main goals. Our first goal here is to identify the mood of a piece of writing. And our second goal is to identify the tone of the author. So both of those have to do with our skill that we're practicing, and they practice with our vocabulary words today as well. So we have two vocabulary words we're going to be adding to our vocabulary checker. We are going to be adding in the words mood and tone. So go ahead and make sure you put these into your vocabulary checker, and we're going to come across the definitions in just a few minutes. The first word that we're going to talk about is mood. So mood is the general atmosphere created by the author's words. A good way to think about this is that mood is the way I feel when I read. So we would say, how do I feel when I read? Does this reading make me feel happy? Does it make me feel sad? Does it make me feel scared? When we put together all of the vocabulary words and all of the locations and characters and information that an author is trying to tell us, we come away with a mood. Mood is all about us. So what we want to think is that mood is all about me. It's what I feel as a reader. So what we want to remember is that as you read something, your feelings can change. So your feelings may start off one way, or they may change from situation to situation. It is possible to have multiple moods inside of one reading. So that's mood. When we talk about describing mood, we want to use any number of our feeling words. So these are words that just help us to understand how we feel as a reader. So from top to bottom, left to right, we have the words fanciful, melancholy, frightening, mysterious, frustrating, romantic, gloomy, sentimental, happy, sorrowful, joyful, or suspenseful. Now, these are not the only words that we would use to describe tone, or excuse me, to describe mood, because we know that there are any number of words that we can use when we talk about our own personal moods. Some of these words are overall positive. Words like joyful and happy and fanciful are good examples of positive words, whereas words like melancholy, frustrating, and gloomy, we would say, well, that's more of a negative feeling. We also have words that just don't express either strictly positive or negative. They just help us with those feeling words like romantic or sentimental. So what we want to think is, what words would we use to describe ourselves as a reader? So as you read through something, how does that thing make you feel? So for me, I really like to read adventure stories. So those can be anywhere. My mood can be fanciful, it can be frightening, depending on what type of adventure it is. Maybe there's some mystery involved in it. So the feelings that we get as we read are qualified as mood. So what is mood then for us as we look at it? We are going to look at 6 pictures, and we're going to work on guessing what the mood is for each of those pictures. So here's my first one. I see a pumpkin that's carved to look like a jack-o'-lantern, and I see that it's got this little spider on the top of it. So that kind of tells me maybe it's Halloween-y. Halloween in general is meant to be kind of spooky, frightening, scary. So I might use some of those words to describe this pumpkin here. Now, if you really like Halloween, you may not use a word like frightening. Maybe you would use a word like exciting. Or adventurous. If you really like haunted houses, maybe that's something that makes you feel excited rather than frightened. Remember that mood is personal, so that there really isn't one correct answer, because it's all about how you feel as you're doing something. So the mood that I picked for this, I picked spooky, just because that's the way I think it was trying to tell me. All right, here's my next one. I've got some pineapples. One is wearing some really cute sunglasses. I see some balloons here in the background. Right, we've got a lot of different color balloons here, and we've got some of those party blowers where you blow on them and a little thing comes out the side of it. So these pineapples look like they're ready to party. So I think that this looks really enjoyable. I would use a word like happy, joyful, fun, silly, because that's the way I feel when I look at all of these pineapples at their party here. So the word that I picked is fun. Okay, here's our next one. We've got this really lovely lady. She's throwing some confetti up in the air, and she looks like she has a really big smile on her face. So how do you feel when you look at this? What emotions do you feel? What moods do you have? When I look at it, I see someone who is just truly happy. She looks like maybe she's celebrating something. And I just feel very happy for her. So maybe words like happy, joyful. We could use words like excited or excitement. That could work. The word that I picked here was just happy. It makes me feel happy when I look at her. I love seeing people celebrate things. Here's our next one. I have 2 people who they look like they're snuggled up and watching the sunset. They've got some candles around them, and well, that just makes me kind of happy. It makes me think that maybe this is maybe in a romance movie somewhere. What do you think when you see this? What types of words do you hear or words do you feel that express your mood when you look at this? For me, the mood that I picked, this looks romantic. This looks like a really good definition of something that is romantic. Okay, and here's our last one. So I see this gentleman here who got his hands through his hair. He's kind of maybe smiling, but I don't really know if that's necessarily a smile. He looks That's a feeling that I've had before. He looks kind of unhappy with something, like, oh gosh, I can't believe I did that. So maybe he's unhappy with something that he did, or something that's happening around him. So what does this make you feel? What type of mood do you have when you see this picture? What does it make you think of? For me, I'm going to go ahead and pick the word frustrated, because that is exactly how I feel some days. When I feel frustrated, I just kind of want to put my hands up and just kind of make that face. So I'm going to go ahead and say frustrated. What we want to remember when we're looking for mood is that mood is entirely personal. So it's all about you and how the thing that you are watching or reading makes you feel. The reason that I really stress this is because our next word is tone. So if mood was all about how you feel, tone is all about the author. And you want to be really careful because these are very similar words. When we talk about tone, tone is the author's attitudes towards the writing. And that includes things like characters or the situation and the attitude toward the readers. So if we said that mood is all about me, it's all about how I feel, tone is all about how the author feels. So it's about the author's attitude. So when you think of tone, what I want you to think about is like tone of voice. When we say things in different tones, it expresses different things that we don't have to say. So if I just want you maybe to follow a direction, I might say, stop what you're doing and turn to this page. I'm going to be very calm. My tone is going to be very calm. But if I see maybe a toddler trying to touch a hot stove, I'm going to be more like, stop, don't do that. Stop what you're doing. When we say things, our tone changes. So depending on what we're trying to say, it shows our attitude. We want to think the same thing about when people are writing. We express our attitudes in the words that we use and how we say things. Now, a work of writing can have more than one tone. So for example, I could have a tone that is both serious and humorous. I could be writing something informational, but I could make it funny. So when we talk about tone, there can be more than one, and tone can change. So just like mood, I could start a certain way and then end a certain way. What we want to remember is that these things are flexible and can change. Tone is set for us by the setting, our choice of vocabulary, and all the other details. So what we want to say, what I mean when I say this, is that tone is what we get when we look at everything put together. Author's purpose, point of view, the connotation of our vocabulary words, the information that is being told to us. When we put everything together, we're able to come across with tone. We are able to figure out what the author's attitude is towards something. So when we look at words that we use to describe tone, we're going to see some that are similar or exactly the same as ones that we saw when we were dealing with mood. So we have words like gloomy, which appeared in both places. So our list of examples that I came up with for these ones, we have amused, humorous, pessimistic, angry, informal, playful, cheerful, ironic, pompous, horror, light, sad, clear, matter of fact, serious, formal, resigned, suspicious, gloomy, optimistic, and witty. So I found this list online and I thought it was just a really great list. But what we want to remember is that there are more ways to describe something. So tone is just the author's attitude, and you can have a lot of different attitudes towards things. This is not the only list that we can use. Now, if there are any words in here that you aren't sure about, or any words from our mood list that you're not quite sure about, go ahead and look those up. There's not really any context that we can use in this case, but look them up because they're words that are going to be really helpful for you to know at some point in time. So we're going to go ahead and look at 3 examples, and we are going to try to figure out what the author's tone is as we read. We'll also practice deciding what the mood is as well. All right, so let's do our first one together. Trey looked out the window. The rain was still pouring down. He threw his baseball glove on the couch with a sigh. The thunder cracked and his phone dinged. Trey picked up the phone. It was a message from his cousin. The game is canceled because of the weather. Trey didn't reply to the message. He threw the phone back on his bed and rubbed his temples. The rain pattered on the roof. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at, we are going to look at mood. So we want to think about how does this make me feel? What is the mood of this as I read it? To me, this is a good example of something that feels kind of gloomy because it's rainy and it's kind of yucky out. I feel kind of sad for Trey because he seems really upset by it. So I think I'm just going to use that word upset to describe my mood. I feel kind of gloomy and upset when I read this. So what we want to look for next is tone. So what can we use to talk about tone? What's the author's attitude towards the things that he's talking about? So I see a couple of things that might help me. First thing I want to look at is vocabulary. What words does this author use to help me figure out how he feels? So we see things like the rain is pouring down. We see that Trey didn't reply, which is, I think, kind of telling for how he feels. He threw the phone on the bed and he rubbed his temples. That to me is kind of like a sign of someone who's like, oh, he's feeling frustrated and unhappy. So overall, I actually kind of just want to keep the same word that I had used for my mood. I also think this has kind of a gloomy tone. Everything is just kind of sad and unpleasant as we read through it. And I'm using my words as a way to prove the way that I feel. Just like when we talk about main idea and supporting detail, it's really important that you can prove your idea about tone by using specific words in the text. So let's look at the next one. Okay, so here's our next reading. Katie cut out the construction paper heart with great care. Her hand moved with precision. This was not going to be an ordinary Valentine's Day card. Katie was going to make it special. She went over the penciled letters with her nicest pen. Classical music played in the background. Katie made fancy cursive letters. Slowly, gently, she pasted the lace to the edges of the card. Her mom was going to love this card as much as Katie loved her. It was almost complete. Just a few more special touches to go. All right, so the first thing that I think about when I read this is that this is just so sweet. So I know that that's not really a word to describe my mood, but what words could we use to describe mood? Well, I think that this is very loving. It makes me think of the love that Katie has for her mom. This makes me feel special. Even though I'm not Katie or her mom, I still get the feeling that there's a great love between them, and it makes me feel special. It reminds me of my mom. So I guess it also makes me a little bit emotional because it does remind me about my mom. So then let's talk about tone. How does the author feel overall? What's the author's attitude? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some vocabulary. So I see that she moves with great care. She uses precision. It was not going to be an ordinary Valentine's card. She wants to make it special. She uses her nicest pen. She uses fancy letters. And I really like this whole sentence here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it because I really like the way that our author is using this sentence. Her mom was going to love this card as much as Katie loved her. So how does our author feel about Katie? I get the feeling that there is a lot of love that went into this. So I think that I can use that for my word for mood. I think that Katie is very sweet and very kind. So those are kind of the words that I would use to describe the tone of this: sweet, kind, full of care. And I'm going to use all of those words that I had underlined here to kind of show all about the care that Katie has. Okay, so I've got one more I want to do with you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. And then I want you to pause the video and think about your personal mood and what the author's tone might be after you finish reading. Okay, so let's go ahead and read it together. The cold wind whipped as Stanton raced against it. This was no night for a calm ride. The horse's hooves clicked as Stanton whipped the reins. He clutched the king's message in one hand and his crossbow in the other. A wolf howled. He saw motion in the bushes ahead. Not a good sign. It could be an ambush. Stanton extended his finger over the trigger of the crossbow. More wolves howled together. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to think about your mood as you read this. What are you feeling? Also think about what the author's tone is. What is the author feeling through this? What is he trying to get us to feel? All right, so I'm going to go through what I think my mood and tone are. So first thing I'm going to think about is mood, and then I'm going to think about tone. So this to me reminds me of like an adventure story. So I think adventurous. Oops. I'm not sure what word I was trying to spell there, but it was not adventurous. Let's try that again. Adventurous. I also feel a little bit scared, not like very scared, but I'm kind of like, ooh, this is interesting. I also feel kind of excited when I read this. Now, when I think about author's tone, I think this author is really trying to go for suspense. So I think that is just the perfect word to use here is suspense. I did not spell that correctly. Sheesh, I'm having a hard time with her spelling today. Suspense, there we go. The author here is just trying to get us to feel very suspenseful as we read through it. So what I want you to remember is that mood and tone are kind of the wrap up of everything we talk about with the author. So what we're looking at with author, we want to really make sure we're focusing on author's purpose always. Why is this author writing? Are they trying to persuade me, inform me, or entertain me? We want to then ask about author's point of view. How do they feel about these things? Use the connotation of the words to decide whether or not an author is feeling positively, negatively, or neutral. And after we've kind of decided how that author feels, positive, negative, or neutral, we can then go and look at mood and tone. Our key takeaway here is that mood is all about us. How do I feel as I read? Whereas tone is all about the author. What is the author trying to say? What is their attitude towards the things that they are talking about? So homework is up on Google Classroom. So make sure you are reviewing carefully and reading closely as you go through things. As always, if you have any questions, you can email me, call me, or send me a remind message and I'll get back to you. Good luck, and I will talk to you in our next lesson. Bye, everybody.